All right. So let's get started. Great. All right. So hopefully you are in the right spot. We are going to be going over creating podcasts with Adobe Audition today. So if you haven't yet, please download Adobe Audition from the Creative Cloud and set that to go before we begin. Plan for today, we are going to talk about what is a podcast, and you are actually going to record a demo podcast today. In Audition, we'll go over setting up a multi-track sequence, how to work with different tracks, how to add music and find music, some cool advanced editing techniques, and then how to export. I'm also going to show you, in case you wanted to start your own podcast for real, what you do and how you go about that to get actually published. Um, but before we dive in, a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me. And I will frame this around podcasting as well. That is my USC email address. You are welcome to reach out anytime after the class if you have questions and or you have published your podcast and you want a good listener. I'm there. I'm an Adobe certified educator and I have certifications in lots of different things. And I'm also on the podcast for these as well. So if you check out our Adobe channel and there's like topics and creativity, you can hear me in my podcasting voice, which is much less nasally because I have to talk like this in my microphone. And this is just, where we are. And so I did one recently where it was about like creativity in the classroom. And then they were talking about generative AI, which is Adobe's big thing and what they're pushing at Max. And we were talking about different ways of using that effectively. So we'll also take a look at how we can use one AI tool inside of Adobe Audition today. And that was actually on the podcast as well. And professionally, I work on set as a DP, AD, VFX editor, and colorist. I'm actually doing a Doritos spec commercial next weekend for that competition. Anybody else participating? So Doritos once a year does like this competition where the top one wins $1 million for your team. And so everybody competes and then they get lots of free commercials, which is also, we can like, yes, talk about paying artists and the ethics around that. But also it's really fun because people make a lot of like dumb things and then post on Instagram. And then even if you don't win, it's like you probably made something dumb and catchy that people are going to notice. So I'm participating as the VFX person for one of the teams. And I have been a classroom teacher for now over 22 years. This is my 23rd year. And I started in elementary school and then realized not a morning person and have been teaching college for the past 13. And I have 18 years of production experience. So also if any of you are thinking about like working on set, I can absolutely answer questions about that. I work full time over at Oxy down the street. That's where I came from today. And outside of this, I work as a talent agent. So I know at Annenberg, a lot of people are interested in like agency marketing. If you have questions about that too, feel free to reach out. I actually just got coffee with a USC student yesterday to talk about life goals, and I'm always happy to do those as well. So I want to know, what is your name and have you done podcasting before? And if you haven't, that's totally fine. And if you have, I want to know, what were you podcasting about? So whether or not it was like you were on a podcast or you were helping a friend do something or you did like a YouTube live stream. It's like a form of a podcast, video podcasting. So
I saw
wait, introduce yourself first because not everybody knows you.
my name's Angel. Hello, I'm a grad student first year, digital social media. We went to the grad here as well. I was a theater major, and I in theater.
Wait, I didn't know you were a theater major.
I was. And in theater, we had a podcasting class. I don't know if it still exists. There's a podcasting class here at USC. They didn't teach us any of the how to edit the audio or any do anything like that. It was just more like ideation of a podcast and here's like record it and maybe it won't sound like shit. So that's what that class entailed. Um, and that was like maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so we came up with I came up with a podcast with my best friend called Dragon the Hag. And it never got off the ground. And we never actually published anything, but we did a demo podcast for it. I think the episode was about Kim Kardashian heating up her M&Ms before she eats them. And so yeah, it's because inside it gets gooey,
Yeah.
melty, but it's like still the crunch. I don't know.
It's be a very short microwave time.
Yes. And we almost burned my house down doing it. We tried it live. And then I also was a live streamer on Twitch for like many, many years. So I guess that's like a form of that.
Yes, absolutely. Welcome.
Neil, I'm senior studying communications. Actually even host of my own podcast. It's called Lifting Latinos. The reason I'm actually late today is because I was at the gym. But yeah, so it's a fitness wellness podcast, specifically tailored towards the Latinx community. And yeah, it's really fun. I kind of talk about everything, not just lifting. It could be like hiking. We recently had one about like powerlifting and like competitive powerlifting. So yeah, it's like connected to the media center, like the big stuff there.
Wait, so it's like published on campus?
Yeah, it's on Spotify.
Oh, that's very exciting. Awesome.
But now we're undergraduate students. I majored in recording of, so I use the Pro Tools and I also use the Audition, but I haven't used it for a long time, so I forgot some skills. That's why I want to come here to study how to make the podcast, because I used to use the recorders to record, the sound or to make the movie.
Very cool. Welcome.
Sorry, my name is Wendy. I'm a second year master's student, majoring in PR and advertising. I finished my undergrad at Syracuse University in Central New York. So I actually made a marketing plan for an ad agency to promote their podcast program. I was not actually like a host. I just like an assistant to help them to, jot down the notes and schedule the meeting or etc. So, but this whole experience got me pretty interested. Oh, what if I open a podcast program? Yeah. So that's pretty much.
Yes, and I was going to say, and now that you're in LA and not New York, you have to start a podcast because that's just what we do in the city. Everybody has one. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Ingrid, second-year grad student in management. And I think in the pandemic is when I got interested in podcasts, just listening to them a lot. But my roommate at the time had got a Rode microphone from Amazon, so we just played around with that. And I guess the closest thing to actual podcasts is my undergrad had like a radio station, so I did participate in a radio station, but I do think radio is probably still pretty different from podcasting. So yeah, but audio overall, that's my audience.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like getting a mic and getting a setup and being interesting, very similar to radio. Oh, welcome.
Like a little bit of very like not too much. Yeah.
What was it on?
Spooky stories people have for Halloween.
Very timely. Awesome. Well, I did a podcast one time for a competition that was called Creatures of the Deep. And we did like an ocean series. And it was cute. We had a lot of sound effects. And it was very educational and also went nowhere, but loved it. And now I have been a guest on lots of random podcasts. Yeah.
I also have plans to start a podcast, which is why I wanted to take this.
Yay.
Because like for the new season of RuPaul's Drag Race, I want to be like a review series for it. And so like that focuses specifically on the fashion of it. So yes, I need to learn this.
Yes. This is great. I like how a lot of you like also have an idea for something you might do with this. So, talking about podcasts, we are making something that is basically a contained digital file. So unlike radio where we're live streaming something, we are making an audio file that is going to be available on the internet, and it can be downloaded or it can be streamed. And the idea is that you are going to have a series of digital installments of something. So when we think of an idea, you're not just thinking about a topic, but what is the structure of your podcast? Like, do you bring on special guests? Is there a fun fact? What is your intro and your outro? How long is it? So you're almost like creating a TV series, but through audio. So when we're thinking about podcasting, we're going to have some kind of title music, and we're going to look at music today. And this is going to be the first thing that's going to lead people into what are we going to hear and what is the vibe. And then typically you'd have some kind of intro sequence like, hello, everyone. My name's Diana, and welcome back to Creatures of the Deep. Today, maybe I'll introduce our special guest. Maybe I'll introduce our creature of the day. So some kind of thing that I'm always going to do at the beginning. And then we have our voice of the primary host. That would be me. And then we might have other hosts, or we might have a special guest, or we might have some kind of like pre-recorded thing, and then some kind of sign off and call to action. So my husband also has one on Twitch, and he is from the Bahamas. And he always talks about like when he first comes on, he has a stream called Island Time. And then when he signs off, he's just like, all right, well, be safe out there in those treacherous waters, and I'll see you back on the island. It is very cute. And so some kind of catchy sign off that people are gonna like quote you about later because it's just that good. So in terms of storytelling, we're going to start today by ideating. And we want to make sure that you're obviously creating something interesting. And these are a couple different ways that you can do it, of like thinking about something that is relatable and having your audience put themselves in your story. So like Shruti was just talking about like horror Halloween stories of making you feel like you're experiencing what is happening. Personal stories and anecdotes are always really interesting as well, because those are stories that only you could tell. And so thinking about like, is your podcast going to be really emotional? Are you going to bring on guests that have lived crazy lives? Or creating suspense. So thinking about too, if you're doing like an advertising break, making sure people are going to come back and not just end because an ad came on. You can also bring characters to life. One of my friends does a murder mystery one about the 1950s and has it almost like a radio play where she's like casted different actors and they all come back week to week to be different characters. And this is a key one. A lot of people think, oh, I have to like describe everything in a podcast because it's audio only. But how would you show something in a podcast? Yeah, like we could add in some sound effects, we can add in some music. Think about when you're telling a story, you're not just describing what people are saying, but like, where are we? Actions, scenery, make it like really rich. What? Yeah. Yeah. So we want to bring people into that moment. So like if I was doing a podcast and I was talking about like when I had my big teaching moment of I realized I did not want to wake up at 7 a.m. and be an elementary school teacher anymore after studying this for 4 years. Um I would be like, and I walked in, and there was a whole classroom filled with 32 students around the age of 6, and they were all looking at me expectantly. And I realized inside I would rather be sleeping. And I like saw the bright carpet and the little window clings and thought about doing this every day for like the next 20 years. We got personal moments, we got scenery being described, we have emotions. All right, we'll come back to the star moment in a second. Ending with a positive takeaway of having some kind of impact as to like why did we go on such an emotional journey with you today, and like what do you want your audience to leave with. So also thinking like, what is the goal of your podcast? Are you inspiring? Are you providing some comic relief in life? All right, so who can tell me what is a star moment?
Is that like just like the most like immersive, repeatable moment of the podcast? Like the moment that's like so maybe they can even like put their star moment at the beginning so people will want to watch until they get to that.
Yes, this is going to be your memorable point, and this is like if people were going to talk about that podcast episode, they'll be like, "Oh, think about it like Friends. Of did you listen to the one about?" And then they'll fill it in, and they'll be like, "No, I missed that episode." And they're like, "Oh, let me fill you in," and then they'll take you back. So, have we all seen Friends? You know, like how all the episodes are named, like, oh, the one with like the sweater or something like that. So you're going to have a moment in yours that is going to be branded, and think about like people talking about your podcast. And this is like that moment that everybody's like, ooh, that one. All right. So first, we're going to do some brainstorming. We are going to need a topic for your podcast. So you're going to take 5 minutes to brainstorm a topic that you're interested in working on today. Think about the overall structure. So does every episode have a special guest? Do you have more than one host? Is there a music segment? How many commercial breaks would you have? And we are going to be recording a short sample of this today in class. So also think about like what you are ready to talk about without doing a ton of research or calling a friend as a special guest. So you have like people in this room and your current knowledge. What would you make? So we'll brainstorm for 5 minutes. And I want you to just like jot down some notes.
Like my podcast, or should I make up?
You can do your podcast.
That was like my. Also, I like
Is
custom-
it structured?
Mhm.
Okay. No, we're gonna share in a moment.
Also, we have custom music already
Okay,
for the intro.
I like it. No, but this will be great. Now you have options.
Change it.
Well, well, no, I mean, there's like some podcasts where people film the people talking.
Yeah,
So now you just have options.
I want to do that. Like, I'll be in traffic for who's they have to see me.
Yes.
Because then why would I get in traffic?
You could just make sure that you have a really distinctive voice where you just start talking and people tune in and they're like, oh, it's Angel.
I think it's them now.
We could just visualize it.
Like it's a fashion thing, so I should probably wear something fashionable.
Well, speaking of voices, I had a student who was in my Zoom class last semester who never turned on their camera. And when I was leaving Annenberg last week, I heard his voice. And I was like looking around the lobby as in like,
That's
I would just recognize that anywhere because I've been listening to you for 10 weeks now. And I was like, what do you look like? I did find him. I was like, were you in Premiere in the spring semester on Zoom? And he's like, yeah, Diana. And I was like, okay, well, I had my camera off the whole time, so I understand I'm very easily recognizable, but it was good. She's been like, you should come podcast with us. You got that memorable voice. All right, let's go in reverse order. Shruti, what do you have?
Like, uh, first was like the spooky legends, like the same, similar to what I've done before, and that amongst like fairy tales, like um describing, I guess, like all the popular fairy tales, and another one's like holidays, all of the discussing how different cultures celebrate holidays.
So like all kind of like educational structurally, what are you thinking? Like the fairy tale one, for example.
Oh, like the Disney version is like this, but then the actual version is like darker. This actually happened in the original text.
And would it just be you each time?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Ingrid.
So inspired by the idea of reviewing RuPaul, I really like Korean dramas. So something that reviews Korean TV shows.
Love that.
Yes. So format wise, what would it be like?
Well, feel like too long, maybe 30 minutes, and then feel probably more examples on different structures. There's intro and outro, and the middle part will be the review part.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Wendy.
Since I recently looked for a job, so I just directly use one of the behavioral questions during the interview. Like, describe a challenging situation you face at work and how you handle it.
So you'd like bring on a different guest each episode? Would you bring on a different guest each episode?
Yeah.
Cool. And also, as you're ideating, think of the title of your podcast as well. You don't have to decide right now, but just ideate like the challenge or something. Make something dramatic. All right, hold on. Yeah, and it would be interesting to like pair somebody who had traveled to someplace paired with somebody who lives there regularly and have them like discourse about what they think is interesting. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I shared mine, but mine is gonna be my fitness podcast is kind of, well, yeah, it's about fitness, wellness, things like that. But in terms of like my structure, I usually start with an intro, kind of just like introducing what the episode's going to be about, and then I kind of like to have like a hook, like stay tuned for this special little segment thing. Like I've done like kind of short little interviews, like a little special kind of within the episode, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, stay tuned, listen to that, or I'll have like shout outs to like listeners that they've asked their questions, and I'm like, stay tuned for getting your answers, to those questions. And then I usually have a guest most of the time. Most of the time I kind of depend on guests and come to my podcast and I interview them about whatever sport they're doing. And then I usually do an outro. I usually have like a little catchphrase. It's kind of creepy though, but anyways. And then
No, wait, now we need to know what is your catchphrase?
So, oh, okay. So like lifting Latinos,
Mhm.
it's like it's like Spanglish, so like y recuerda, which means like and remember that two L's make a W. So it's like
Oh, I like that.
it's kind of cringy.
No, I
kinda
like
kick
that.
myself every time I like have a visitor, but like it's one of my friends.
Wait, and then do you have a really cool animation as like
I
the
should have,
podcast
but
cover?
yeah.
Oh, that is actually what we're doing in Premiere tomorrow. Keyframe animations.
I'm so excited.
You should be. It's gonna be good. Okay. this is a good example specifically for yours of lots of different structures that you can do. Because I like how you're hyping things that come later. And so on a podcast, you could have something that people look forward to, like our special guest today is going to be this person. But for our first part, we are going to talk about green juices or have some kind of like educational content first. Or you could flip that and always start with a guess and be like, but stay tuned for tips on like how to build muscle quickly or some kind of like hook. And then you could also do like a giveaway on your podcast as like to this episode is sponsored by 24-hour fitness. And we are gonna be like, yes, doing this. And so you'll see like lots of podcasts get sponsorships because if you have a lot of listeners, that's a good place to just like plug something cool that's coming up. Um, or you could be like trivia time and we'll get the answer at the end of the episode. Yeah. So just think like segment wise. What types of things are you going to make it so that everybody turning in is going to stay till the end and is interesting and you have specific things that you're filling in instead of just somebody coming on and the two of you are just like rambling for an hour.
Okay, so our podcast, me and my friend are starting, it's called Divinely Dressed because my name's Angel. And so basically we found a way to gamify RuPaul's Drag Race, the fashion in particular, because they always talk about like who is the fashion queen of the season. And so we came up with a mathematical formula to actually determine who is the fashion queen of the season. So basically every look that happens on the runway, you either give it a heaven, a limbo, or a hell. And hell means -1 point, limbo means you stay the same, 0 points, and then heaven means 1 point. At the end, you take all the ones you assigned hell and you give them whichever one was the worst that week, like it's awful, they are eternally damned. And the person who did the best on the runway that week from your heavens is divinely dressed. And so basically people will be able to play along at home and like determine like, because it's obviously subjective to your own opinion, but they'll be able to like come up with their conclusion on who the divinely dressed person is for the week. So it's like it's almost like fantasy football, but for gay people. And so yeah, and then we're gonna have guests and stuff like that. And then yeah, that's my format.
Love it. Yes, and I love the gamification of it as well, which is very trendy. And I follow several that are like that, including a Harry Potter one.
Yeah.
And I think that any way that you can get your audience involved and like actively doing things as well definitely makes it really fun. One of my friends also has like a D&D podcast. And just think about the amount of money you can earn with this. So also think about sponsorships, advertising within your podcast, but also like this would be a great way to have like a store where you can go and get your own like scorecard and you could order them, or you could have like specific props that are mentioned on the show. And you could have like a whole website, an empire. And then give me like 10% for coming up with that idea. So we are now going to go into Audition in just a moment, but we had mentioned getting different microphones and kind of like getting set up to do this. So apologies if you're in my premiere class, but we're going to talk about microphones before we dive in and some terms that we're going to look at. So first big one is we are going to look at waveforms really particularly inside of Audition. And we can see amplitude wise, this is also a good review for the two of you. What are we looking at in the waveform?
Tops and the bottom.
Yes, the tops and the bottoms are how loud it is. So when we're inside of Audition, we are going to be able to control this very minutely. So if you have a point in your waveform and somebody coughs or somebody like bonks the mic, which happens pretty often because when you podcast, you talk very close to the microphone and it's easy to be like, and like lean forward and you hit it. And so you can tell amplitude wise if there are spikes and you're like, ooh, this is where that bump happens. Or if somebody doesn't enunciate very well, you'll see a very short amplitude on here. And what we're going to do in Audition is go into what's called the waveform view that allows you to see the waveform specifically. And we can physically modify these. So we can highlight the part that is a little bit too soft and scale it up so that the amplitude increases, which affects the volume. Very good. And so looking at this, like if this is too loud, we can take this clip in particular and bring it down. I have somebody that I work with really regularly that swallows all of their N consonants. And sometimes it's very hard to hear what they're saying because they'll just be like, oh yeah, so today I look at this and I'm just like, where did the K go? Like enunciate. And so I will go in the waveform, try to find this like little itty bitty like CK sound and bring it up and be like, and now we have formed the word completely and it's easier to hear. So we'll take a look at how to do that. We're also going to talk about frequency and modifying the frequency today, specifically to amplify somebody's voice. Who can tell me what frequency is? Pitch. Very good. So when I'm speaking, I actually have a pretty limited range of pitch that my voice can go, unless I'm like singing or being like really deep. But normally I don't talk like this. But like you can still hear that ear-wise. So when we're in audition, you'll see the frequency is a whole range of human hearing. But my voice is going to be very kind of specifically at a pretty narrow range. And we're going to focus on that range in particular and try to bring it out. Hi, Camille. Here?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Why?
It's like there's it's not like the recording, like the audio studio,
Mhm.
and they have one side where it's like recording, and the other side is like the control room. And all that
Yes.
stuff. Like, what are they doing in the control room? Because a lot of the time I just do the recording side, and I never go in there.
Mixing. Yes. I'm going to show you some mixers as well. But basically, because we have the same thing at Oxy, so you have an ISO booth, and the ISO booth is dampening all noise. So you get a very, very clean audio recording. And what's great about that is we'll talk about microphones in a second, but you don't need a highly directional microphone because you're in such a dead space. So you can use like a cardioid condenser microphone that makes your voice sound a little bit more round because it's picking up not just in a straight pickup pattern, but like a little bit of how your voice is spreading out around the room. People in the booth are listening and adjusting the sliders so that as you like laugh or you get really serious, that your volume level is staying the same. And that if you get excited, they're bringing you down and watching to make sure that your audio is not peaking. They can also, as your sound is coming in, EQ it, and you can do that in real time as you're listening. But usually you want to record your audio as cleanly as possible, and then you'll EQ it after. Yes.
How do you feel about enhanced speech from it?
We're going to look at that today. It actually works pretty well for just being like a one-stop shop, but we're going to talk about what it's actually doing.
Okay.
Good question. All right, then we're going to talk about mono versus stereo as well. Yes. Angel, what is that? Mono, meaning one. So some microphones are going to record a single audio track. Others are going to record two audio tracks. Typically, when you're recording voice, so you want a mono microphone because your voice is coming from one single source of sound. So if you're doing something like Foley or you're recording music, it makes more sense to have two inputs to get more of a stereo left-right feel. But when you're talking, mono microphones tend to be more prevalent. But we're going to take a look at bringing in music and recording your voice and how in Audition you can actually work with both at the same time. Then we're going to talk about panning as well, which is great because most people listen to podcasts with headphones. And when you pan sound, you're moving it between the left and right speakers. And that can have a really cool effect. So for our intro, think about if there's like sound that you want to move. So for like my ocean one, we had a whale. And the whale would go from like one ear to the other ear and back again. And then at the end, we had bubbles, and the bubbles also would go back and forth because we were surfacing after we had gone deep.
Wow.
See, and then you thought yours was cheesy. Yeah, that was our outro. And then if you're doing like an hour-long podcast, this is where, unlike our premiere class, we would use ducking. Who can tell me what ducking is? Angel again.
It's when like one audio track is like quieter, right? So that way another one can like be more prevalent.
Yes.
To like really add to like the immersion.
Yes. So my murder mystery friend has her episodes go on for like an hour and a half sometimes, which I guess people just listen to at work. And she has like this very Victorian era thing that comes in, and she's like, and then it was like this daughter who, family history wise, and then goes on forever, and then it has like very ominous music underneath. And most people do like kind of an intro and then the music stops and then people start talking. And she has music through most of her episode because it's more of a like audio drama play. And so anytime that she stops talking or takes a break, or oftentimes there's like an interlude as we're changing locations, when she stops, the music comes up on its own. And then when she starts talking again, it's looking at the amplitude, and the higher that is, the more the music comes down to accommodate it. So we're also going to go over how to do that manually, but there is a setting that allows that to happen, and we call that auto ducking, where the computer just like does it for you. All right, in terms of good things to buy, there are 4 main types of microphones. Omnidirectional microphones are good if you are really on a budget and have lots of people on your podcast. So an omnidirectional microphone, like the Latin root, means all directions. And so this is also what people use for conference calls, where you just like put a microphone on a table and everybody sits around the table and then talks. And you just need one microphone, it picks up everybody. The downside is that nobody then is very close to the microphone. You pick up a lot of room tone. It's not super clear. You have no individual control over like whose voice is louder than somebody else's. So one of the other have a lot of D&D friends, I'm realizing. So one of my other friends that does D&D does this, and their stream is terrible because there is one person that just wants to be a voice actor and is just very like, and then I came into the dungeon, and he was like, and I was a thief, and here I go into the night. And they have the same volume input level, and I keep telling them like, that's not good for anybody listening because you get like shocked by how loud the other person is. And they have somebody audio engineering who is trying to like go up and down through the whole episode. And I'm like, instead of paying the person to audio engineer, you guys could just buy like 2 microphones. Yes.
You are always spilling tea on people, you know.
I just, I think that it's important as a student that you are getting real life advice and anecdotes as opposed to just like a lecture. Yes.
This person's
Yes, but also some people are great and you'll hear about them too. So cardioid condenser microphones. Cardioid microphone refers to the pickup pattern. Condenser refers to what it's doing inside. Is your most popular type of microphone if you're doing voiceovers or audio recordings, and those kind of have a heart-shaped pickup pattern. So still kind of directional, but a little bit more spread out. Imagine like a heart coming out of yourself, like that kind of pickup pattern. And a condenser microphone is going to even out the highs and the lows in somebody's voice. So there's not as much variation between somebody being really loud and really soft. And so these are great if you have a controlled environment. So if you are not recording in a dorm room and you have one of those ISO booths and it can be very quiet, get a cardioid condenser microphone. If you do not, then get a shotgun microphone, and that's what's pictured in here. And you'll see a lot of people for apartments, dorm rooms, home setups, things where you can hear traffic outside your window. That's going to be much better than a cardioid microphone because a shotgun microphone is highly directional. So if you are close enough and it is pointed right at you, it is going to pick up very little of other things, like your roommate could be cooking dinner and it would still just pick up you. Then a lavalier microphone is one that pins onto your shirt. This is good if you were doing an on-camera podcast because it is a small, discreet microphone. Not good if you're just doing an audio podcast because you also have to work on not moving too much because if you rustle, it's going to be on there. So between these, I would get ones that you can like put on a desk and record yourself. But if you're on camera having this, if you're like casually on the couch or something like that, you could be loved instead, which is what they use for in-person interviews. But if you're gonna like stream yourself, you can also all sit around a table and all have your individual like shotgun or cardioid microphones pointed at you. All right. Any questions on that? So in terms of if you were to spend money, I always like to show people what I buy or also what I bought when I was a student. So the Rode NT1 microphone is probably like the best cardioid condenser microphone that you can get in this price range. So if you're serious about podcasting and you want your own setup, that's the one that I would recommend. It's really great. It has a pop filter as well. Who can tell me what does a pop filter do?
Stops.
Yes. So if you're really close to the microphone, you get like a lot of spit sounds, like the that kind of stuff, and it takes that out. So you're basically putting your face right here, right next to that, and you are then talking and it is filtering out those like mouth sounds. Then it comes with a shock mount, as you can see from the description here. What does a shock mount do? What did you say? Yes, that it basically, you can see here, has like these little rubber bands that are suspending the microphone in the middle of this mount, and it's so that it doesn't have any handling noise. So when you're recording, you also don't want to hold the microphone because you'll be able to hear your fingers tapping on it. And so ideally, your microphone is going to be suspended in a shock mount like this. And so you can see, looking at these pictures. So this is like an ISO booth where we have absorption panels on the walls to make sure that the sound is not bouncing and echoing. It's very directional. And usually the output is going to be connected to outside the booth into a mixer. So if you are also mixing on your own, this is the mixer I would recommend for budget productions. So mixers obviously are much more expensive, but for $400, you can get like an industry grade one that you can do podcasting with up to 4 people with. So I really like this one and it fits on your desk really nicely and it has USB import as well. So you could just connect it to your laptop and it has 4 XLR inputs in the back. So what that means is you could plug in up to 4 separate microphones of different guests that you have sitting around the table. And each one has a control on the top. So going back to like, what is the person doing outside? So you have, these are called faders, and you're taking these and going up and down for fine tuning as people are talking. And you're setting their overall input level over here first for their microphone, and then you're going to be listening and adjusting these. This is really fun because it also has a talkback microphone. So when you're in a recording studio, you can't hear each other unless you have the button pressed. And so you'll be like, that was really good. Can we take it back? We're going to roll again. And then you like unmute yourself and then do your little record thing in Audition. And then you record, then unmute yourself again and be like, that was really great. Let's move on. And then you just keep going. What's really cool about this too is that it has like a little mini sound effects pad that's programmable. And so if you were trying to do like applause or different things as you were doing your podcast, you can program 8 different sounds in there and then like tap them as you're doing your recording. So that is that. That's a Tascam Miss Class 4. Any other questions about like getting your space set up? So obviously we don't all have ISO booths like this, but even just hanging up like blankets in your house, a lot of my actors who record voiceover just go into their closet where clothes are hanging, and that's like pretty good audio in there as well. Yeah. Yes.
It needs things.
Yes. Don't have an empty closet. All right, so if you are all ready, we are going to go into Adobe Audition. We're going to get set up and then we'll take a break and also give you some time to record. All right, so when you first launch Audition, you will see this workspace. And if yours doesn't look the same, we're going to come up to Window or Workspaces. And then I'm going to be on default for today. And you'll see that we have files over here. We then have an effects rack. You would have history and video in the bottom left. I'm going to have history open so that each action that we do, we can see and it gets recorded and I can come back here if needed. This is where we're primarily going to be working in the middle. You'll have your levels down at the bottom, which we'll talk about in a moment, and our essential sound panel over here on the right-hand side. So for our podcast, we actually have a really great template in here. If we come up to File, New Multi-Track Session of a podcast. And you'll notice that here your sample rate and your bit depth are locked together. We'll talk about both of these in a moment, but these are locked specifically at 44.1 kilohertz and 16 bits because this is what you would need if you're submitting to Spotify or Seed Pod or any of those other big podcasting sites, that these are their requirements, and that's why it's locked for you, so you don't have to convert it later. Yeah, so 44,100 hertz or 44.1 kilohertz. And so I'm just going to name mine podcast to start. On the template. So you shouldn't have the option. It should be grayed out. Are you on podcast?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yep, there you go. All right, so what I love about this is actually the exact format that we're going to follow for today, but let me show you what they are giving you at the very top. So they've created markers for you. And here you have a 30-second intro, and you'll see that they have created a marker just by coming over here and adding a marker at the top and then labeling it. These can also be moved around, but this is the format that we're going to follow today. So you're going to come up with 30 seconds of an intro. This could have music. I don't know why Siri thought I was talking to her. This could have music. It should also have like the title of your podcast. So it might be like, welcome to Creatures of the Deep. And then my very exciting shark music. And then you're going to have a main segment for today. And you are aiming for rambling about something for 2.5 minutes. So we're going to have a little sample of what your podcast is going to be like. And then our 30-second outro over here at the end of your wrap up, your call to action, your closing music. Good so far. All right. So over here, we have all the main things that you would typically have in a podcast. So first thing, host is probably going to be you. And you'll notice right now I have, and also if you can't see, we're on this very first one that has arrows because each one of these is different. So once I have my arrows for my inputs and outputs on, you'll notice that I don't have the ability to record currently. I can mute and I can solo, but my record is grayed out. And it's because if I look at my little arrow that has an input, this is saying that I don't have anything selected. So the very first thing I have to do is set up all of my microphones. And I'm going to click that by coming to where it says none and opening up my audio hardware. And this is how you let Audition know which each track should be pulling an input from. So you'll notice on here, I have, and this is where it looks like a lot of us have MacBooks and iPhones, good choices in life. And I can pick my iPhone microphone as an alternate source. So if you decide today that you want to work with somebody, you can set your microphone to be Diana's iPhone, and we'll say yes.
Picking that up via Bluetooth.
Yeah, so if you're logged into iCloud on both of your devices, it will show up as a microphone. And then the important thing is that after you connect your microphone, your sample rate has to match. So what did we say our sample rate was? I'll come help when we are doing our thing. Yes, 44,100. And then if I look at this, I'm like, oh no, it doesn't give me the option for that. That's okay because we can convert this later, but different higher quality microphones that are not your phone might have multiple sample rates. And this is where we would want to click down and pick 44.1 if we can. When you click OK, then I also want to make sure that this is connected. Then you should be able to have this little R for recording. And now I can record on my phone. And then you would continue for anybody else that you're adding. So my interviewee person, where it says none, same thing, audio hardware. And maybe for them, I'm going to say you can use the MacBook Pro microphone. And this is where you can have just very easy setup, no money spent, but still like a high quality recording setup. So my MacBook Pro did give me a sample rate option of 44.1. So I'm going to pick that. And then you'll notice after I selected it, it still didn't assign it to the track. So I can come over here and go to mono and pick my MacBook Pro microphone 1. And just like that, I have a 2 microphone setup. So if I was working with, say, Angel, I could be like, all right, ready, go. And I'd give Angel my laptop and I'd stand over here and then I would record like this. And now we're like far apart enough where, yes, I'm probably going to get some of Angel's audio. Angel's probably going to get some of my audio. But if I brought up the volume, I can make a pretty distinct choice between bringing mine up and bringing Angel's up. And so this is really important that if you have the option of separating the people talking, do it because you will love yourself later because you'll have much more control. Today, if you are just doing your own podcast and you are not interviewing anybody, we can also add and delete tracks. So if I clicked on interview and I came up to multi-track at the top and came to tracks, I can delete the selected track if I've decided I don't need that one. If you are working in a group and there are going to be 2 people hosting and 1 person interviewing, you can also add an additional track and have another interviewer. And then same thing, you would assign them a microphone. You could also assign people the same microphone. So on this one, let's say, for example, I wanted to also put this one as a MacBook Pro microphone. This is fine. Just know that it is going to use the same input. You also don't have to record each person at the same time. So I could just record the host at one time, or I could record onto the interview track at the same time as well. So you're going to enable recording for whichever tracks you're going to do simultaneously. Makes sense so far. So we're picking our microphone, we're enabling recording on the track, and then we are going to go for it. So here, I wouldn't worry too much about like your audio, your sound effects, things like that. We're going to focus on the voice first and getting your content in there. So what's great is you can see your markers as you're recording. And so I'm going to just like give it a go. And I'm just going to do the hosting one. I've decided my episode this week is just going to be me. So once I'm ready to record, I'm going to hit this record button down at the bottom. And I'm going to pause in the beginning because I know I'm going to have some cool music that's going to come in first. And then it's going to be me. and it will look something like this. All right, well, welcome back to Creatures of the Deep. I'm your host, Diana Keeler, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about bottom feeders of more than 60 meters. Come with me as we dive into the ocean and take a good exploration as to how they survive all the way down there. Really cool sound effect music. All right, so today we are going to be talking specifically about some kind of sea creature here. And did you know, fun facts here, etc. We're talking about our podcast. So you'll notice here, I can just keep going if I know what I'm saying for the whole 3.5 minutes, complete with my outro. And I would be paying attention that when I got to this part, I'd be like, well, that's all the time that we have for today. Make sure that you're always cutting your can wrappers so that they don't trap fish. And let's like come back to the surface. And then my bubble sounds come. And so what I want to do is come up with one clean recording. If you are not good at rambling, chances are you're going to have to do this in more than one take. And that's totally fine because then we can come back here and say, actually, okay, this part was trash. We're going to delete this. And I'm just grabbing the end and bringing it back in, putting my time marker to where I want to start, and then pressing record once again. If you want, you can also save that and record onto the other track if you are interviewing yourself or you have a split personality. And you are going to record down here and you can move things from one track to another. So sometimes when I'm doing a recording, I'll oftentimes have like an extra track underneath in case I need to go back and I can just be like, redo, let's go do this one. If you are recording in the same spot where you have something else, make sure that you're muting that track so that it's not playing out loud while you're recording again. Questions? Yes.
Why would you want to capture?
Oh, this is just showing you this in this window so that you have all the components. But you can drag this to wherever you want it to be. So like if I took this and, for example, I'm going to zoom out. You can make this as long as or as short as you want it to be. So right now this is at 3:30, but this, if I kept talking, would just keep going. So like if I was here and then I was just like, and I have so much more to say, and you'll see that it will jump and it will just give me as much time as I possibly need for my episode. And then you can like take this and drag, and you can also create your own markers. So if you say like structurally, we were talking about like doing a giveaway or something like that, we can add a marker, moving our time marker. Let me move my Zoom window. We can add a marker coming over here and pressing M on your keyboard for marker. And then we can be like commercial break or something like that so that you know to stop. But I was saying for today, I would just keep this at 3 minutes and then aim for 3:30. Because that way we have time to listen to everybody's too at that class. Yes.
So is this method more like in the moment kind of editing or like recording kind of?
In the moment recording, but like I was mentioning, if you're like, oh shoot, that was wrong, go back. You can absolutely just like hit stop and then come back and hit record again.
And then I usually have like a desk, so like, I just like hit R on the two tracks, like.
Yes, so you can go at the same time. Yes. And so if you had two separate microphones, you would set them to be separate and then you would turn them both on. And then you would see that they would have different levels here. And then when we come down here to record, like this, you'll see now we're recording on both tracks. And depending on how good your computer is, sometimes you might not be able to see like both tracks showing up. But once you hit the stop button or press the space bar, then they'll both show up there. Other questions? All right, so now we're going to take a break and give you time to record. So in 20 minutes at 9:05, you must be done with your voice part because then we're going to clean it up, add some music, and publish. And then come let me know if you need help. 9:05, 20 minutes. Yes. So if you decide you want to ask somebody in class to be your special guest who you're going to interview, feel free. If you want to do it by yourself, that's totally fine as well. But 20 minutes to record whatever voice stuff you are going to do. And also take a stretch break. Yes. So you're aiming for the template in here. So you're recording some kind of intro hook of like, welcome to your podcast. This is what we're going to talk about today. And then you're going to do like a 2.5 minute brief episode sample. Well, so your intro is about 30 seconds. So imagine there you're putting in some music, talking about the title. So all of you should have a title as well. And then what today's topic is going to be. At the 30-second mark, you should be in your episode. And then 2.5 minutes later, at 3 minutes, you should be like, and that's all the time. In next week's episode, this is what we're going to talk about. Tune in every Tuesday, 7 p.m. here on Spotify or something like that. Yes.
If I can connect to my phone, so if I use my back.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yes.
Because it's a motor, so like.
Oh,
Why?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Also, if you need to go out to record, you are welcome to like take your laptop out there and come back. We also have good success with people who like to import their audio. So you can also like voice recorder out there, talk to yourself, and then come over here and file import and then drag and drop your recording onto here. All right, so welcome back. Next steps, we are going to go to pixabay.com and we're going to go and get some sound effects and music for this. Then we are going to clean up your audio, level everything. And if anything needs to be fixed, I want to show you that waveform view that I had mentioned early as well. So we are going to go to Pixabay, Pixabay.com. And in here, you'll see we have both music and we have sound effects. And so I'm going to start with some music. We're looking for some intro music. And I might even just type in intro music because this is a whole category of things that you have available to you that are going to be short and sweet, but exciting at the same time. Let's go. So some of these you can see are very commercial. So if you're doing like a mystery podcast, you can even do like intro mystery. And you can see that we might have something like so these are all under music. So you're gonna go grab some of that. And then if you have any moments where perhaps you might need something like a heavenly halo sound, we're going to switch over where it says music, click the drop down and come over to sound effects and look for anything that you might need to accent that. So like for mine, for example, I had a lot of bubbles because we're in the deep. Might do something like, and that's like my recurring thing. So what I like about these is when you find your music or sound effects that you want to add, you're going to click on the download button and it just downloads right away. So you don't have to log in or anything like that. And to get that into Audition, you'll come over to File, Import Files, and you will just click on what you added. Oops, let me share the correct screen. So I went to File, Import, and it's going to show up over here in my files. Here's my bubbles now. And you'll notice you have those tracks also created for you. So I can put my sound effects on the sound effects track, and I can put music on my music track. And to add it, you would just click, drag, and drop. It might say that you don't have a matching sample rate and it needs to be converted. And we had talked before about how our project is in 44.1. Some of these might be in 48 kilohertz. So we'll get that pop-up, we'll say okay, and it'll make a copy that's in 44.1 instead. So I'm going to kind of run through the different things I showed you and then give you some time to add them. Are we all good on where to find that stuff? All right, next thing, cleaning things up. So you can see right now, if I had my bubble sound on top of my intro sound, I'm going to sound like, let me move my Zoom window. I'm going to sound like this. All right, well, welcome back to Creatures of the Deep. I'm your, and you can see like now the bubbles are distracting, but maybe I want some bubbles. So you'll notice on each of these, you have this little yellow line that goes through the track. That's your volume. And we can adjust that by clicking and moving it up and down like so. So we're increasing the volume, decreasing the volume. Or we can also create keyframes on it as well. So for example, welcome back. If we wanted the bubbles to start kind of loud, and I'm also zooming in, you can press plus and minus on your keyboard, or you can also grab this top modifier to zoom in and out on your timeline. But let's say that I wanted these to like decrease in volume. Clicking on the line gives you a control point. You don't even have to change tools. And so if I wanted this to come down, I can create 2 points and say start loud, decrease, and then stay down here. And now it will sound more like. All right, well, welcome back to Creatures of the Deep. I'm your. And what's cool is you can also adjust it in real time. So as you're listening, you can adjust the volume. a good measure is if you're looking down at your decibel meter, you want your voice for a podcast to be hitting around -6 to -12. So you can also solo yourself. Host Diana Keeler, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about bottom feeders of more than 60 meters. Come with me as we dive into the ocean. And so you can see there, I'm bringing it down because I'm a little bit high. And what? I'm clicking on this yellow line. This is my volume line. And I'm bringing this down as I'm listening. You'll also notice because I'm in the classroom, we have an echo, we have a projector, we also have lights, which you can't really hear over the projector, and we have air conditioning. So Angel was saying over on the right-hand side, you have this thing that allows you to tag your audio as dialogue. And when you do, you have a bunch of different cleanup options. For today, we are going to take a look at just doing a simple cleanup. Coming down here, we have an EQ filter, and you have one really specifically for podcasting. And what that does is it finds that frequency range of people's voice, and it boosts your lower part of your voice, dips down a little bit, and it boosts the upper part of your voice. And it's very subtle, but very effective and kind of has that like good podcasting sound. And this is what a lot of people use to have that like clean tone. So this is what it sounds like. Great. Well, welcome back to Creatures of the Deep. I'm your host, Jen. And it sounds like I'm enunciating a little bit more, but really I'm just popping those two frequency ranges. You'll also notice that I have air conditioning. So coming over to repair, the other thing that I would take a look at is reducing the noise. So starting really low on this one, we're going to listen and do it in real time and bring it up just as much as I need to take out the air conditioning in the room. Diana Keeler, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking about bottom feeders of more than 60 meters. Come with me as we dive into the ocean and you can see as I was dragging it up, we're now getting rid of that sound, which I know is hard because you're like,
I hear that one.
yes, because you can hear it in the room, but take my word for it. But no, I can hear it right here. And so as you're especially listening with headphones, you'll be able to tell that. So the two big things, again, are under repair, I would reduce your noise. And then under your clarity, I would EQ it with a podcast voice. So doing those two things and adjusting your volume so that your music and your sound effects won't overpower your track is a great place to start. Yeah.
All that it applies into the whole audio track, right?
Yes, correct. So if you wanted it to just be on one clip, you can select your clip and then come over to your clip effects instead. And then you can apply, you have the same thing over here under filter and EQ, and you can add it from here. If you do it on the track, if you have multiple clips on your track though, like for example, let's like cut this one for a moment. Let's say that I had two things. You can click on them individually and say like, this should be podcasting and this should be something else.
And you can still cut it.
Yes. And so you have a razor blade up here if you need to cut anything, just like you would in a video application. And then if I select both of them, I can also EQ them together at the same time. Good question. Other questions?
Do you have any general tips for keyframing? How to approach keyframing?
Yeah, so just level wise, I usually do mine like one track at a time. So I'll look at my host, play my host with the S, so we're soloing, and I'm just gonna keep. All right, well, welcome back. And I'm gonna look down here and see if there's any parts that are above 6 or that are lower than 12. And then those are the parts where I'd be like, ooh, this like needs to come up a little bit, or like this part needs to come down a little bit. And then last thing, you can get very specific if there are, like I was mentioning, pops or things by double clicking. And this takes you into what we call the waveform view. So at the beginning, I was saying you can get really particular about what's enunciated. If I zoom in by pressing plus on the keyboard, we can say, for example, this part right here, this should have been louder. We can't hear it. If I highlight it, you have this little floating volume meter over here. And watch what happens as I click and drag. You can physically modify any of the waveforms in your track. And this is a game changer for if you have somebody that's like snort laughing in your podcast. Those are usually very loud. Have a snort laugher as well. And oftentimes I'm like, ooh, that's jarring. Let's like take that and we're just going to scale you down a little bit. Like so. Whatever you do in here, you're going to save Command S and it gets applied automatically when you come back over here. When you're all finished, you're going to go to File, Export, Multi-Track Mixdown. You're going to do the entire session as an MP3 file. And then once you're finished, you're going to put your MP3 file on our very exciting, oops, I'm not sharing that window. On our very exciting Padlet. And go. Yes.
Well, so that is, oh, and so I was saying, so right now you have, so you were just clicking that, select that. And you're like, yeah. And then on your next graph, yeah. Yeah. So that's. I did last year. So this, yeah, are you sure? So this is like, yeah, we can see they all do like a night one. Oh, really? Yeah. I thought they were different. I thought like we get first and then. No, not this year at least. How far did you get? Oh, yeah. It's all like that. Oh, maybe you can like email them. Yeah, and then they were like, oh, okay. Or like, no, at least you tried. Okay. Like, are you like a senior? I'm a junior. Okay, then you have one more. Yeah. You can do it? Yeah. They might release it in spring. Or I don't know, I can't remember the timeline. Thought I interviewed in spring, not in. Yeah. Let me double check. I don't want to report. Not what I. Well, they said don't talk about ones. Osaka, Japan? Yeah. That sounds as like recording files. But it doesn't know like this. So. Right, because it, yeah, it doesn't look like it recorded anything. Just, did you turn on recording on one of your tracks? So
It doesn't look different. So let's scroll back up. The on. Turn on recording first, and then when you hit the record button, because otherwise it doesn't know which track that's going to record to. So how can I delete all of this? But you don't need to delete anything. I mean, you can delete what you just recorded. But you don't have anything else to print. Oh, what does this dash? So these are the markers. So we're talking about how it already gives you like this is 30 seconds for your intro. And then this is where you're going to record your episode. And this is the first. Yeah, so if you want, you don't have to record like the whole episode right now, but if you want to record something so that you can say something with. You can give that to one. Yeah, you can keep. Yeah, so you're, I mean, now you're enabled. And then you can record and this is something so that you have some kind of audio and then you can play this out. Weird.
What is happening? With these low lines up here.
Those are crossfades. So when you overlap clips, they're gonna crossfade with each other. So if you don't want it to overlap, cut it instead. Because it's happening because you're dragging one on top of it. So like, see the edge of what's like compared to the other. Like don't drag it.
Oh, I didn't know it did that. Oh.
General advice for when you are recording, like comes like audios and like awkward, like running out of things to say.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it just takes practice. Yeah.
It's like can have a little bit of like acting, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the great thing too is that usually you're uploading an audio file to like Spotify or wherever. And so you have time to edit all those things out.
Oh, right.
And because you're not on camera, it's very easy to like take a pause and then just delete it.
Oh,
Yeah.
one will ever know.
Will my clip the same thing? Everything is there.
Yeah, the blue line is the hand. The yellow one is your.
Oh, it's like hard to like the color.
Yeah, you can change your.
Oh, sorry.
How do I reframe again?
Just click. Like click on the yellow line.
Yeah. This one?
Yeah. So you'll click to make a dot. Like click on the this one. And then you can like do the, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Man, I'm so confused. Because I wanted to fade like and like gradually.
Yeah.
Like, how do I do that?
So go to create 2 points because you want one to start low and it's going to fade. Right?
Yeah. Oh, wait. So I should start. Shouldn't I start it like at the beginning?
You can round them.
Oh. Okay. And then I join another one.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you just take the first one and you're going to pick that one. Yeah.
And then if I want to fade out here, I get another one. And then another one.
Mhm.
And then
There you go. Great.
thank you. Is it okay if I just upload the intro?
Yeah.
Because there's no way I have time.
Yes. So don't feel like you need to export and upload something today. But if you want to write down our tiny URL in the event that you do want to finish later, I would encourage you to post so that you can all check out each other's work. And you'll see over here, we have a very cool board. So once you're finished with your MP3, if you decide to finish later, you would just click on the plus button and you would be like Diana's cast and click the first one, or you can drag and drop to upload your file.
It's not letting me export as a file.
Did you do file export multi-track mixdown?
Export, no. Entire session.
Yes, as an MP3. All right, I know that some of you have to leave soon, but I wanted to show you before we end what to do if you are interested in podcasting and you wanted to publish this brilliant idea that you came up with today. Now that you know how to record, you have a whole system on your computer and you're ready to do it. So one of the biggest ones is Buzzsprout. And this is really cool because it is pretty cheap and you can upload up to 2 hours every month for free, which is quite a lot of you talking. And a lot of these aren't totally free, so this is great. And what's cool is you can syndicate it out to a lot of different platforms. So what's great about these is that rather than having to sign up for like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all these different things, you upload here and it gets sent out for you to all those other ones. So I'm gonna just show these so that also they end up on our recording. So you'll all get a copy of the recording after class as well. And you'll see that these are a handful of different ones. The big things here are how much they are per month. Some of them also include easy ways of getting ad revenue. And so like Rev Engine, for example, has a revenue sharing program that will insert ads into your podcast for you. And then based on how many listeners you have, you like get a payout when you log into your account of how much you've earned. Some of the other ones also have really good analytics. So you can see like where people in the world are listening to your podcast so that you also know how to like adjust your content to cater to those people. Similar to like Meta ads, they will also let you know like demographics. So you might realize like your podcast is actually being listened to by middle-aged women who are really into food living in California. And you're like, well, for my next episode, I guess we should talk about food more. And then your rankings go up. So
What's the bit.ly?
for our Padlet,
Yeah. Oh. It's a typo.
is it done? Are we going to listen? Is anybody else done? Yay. Well, we are also just going to listen to Angel's intro.
Yes.
but we'll take a look at one. And then again, if you want to write this down for later, if you decide to do it, I get a notification when each of you post, and I will check it out and email you after. Again, you don't have to finish. This is a free, non-credited workshop, but if you'd like somebody to listen to, I will.
There you go. Excited
Yay.
to edit the audio that much because we're running, but I will do it.
All right, here we go. Very exciting.
My comments.
Did you upload your audition file and not the MP3?
I don't know. Hold on. Is it a PDF file?
No, that's what you
uploaded. Oh, is this it? No. Wait, hold on. Just go back to it.
And you went to file, export, electronic stamp our entire session. And then under the format, you're selecting an.
Oh, what are documents as well? Is that,
Oh, well, that's fine too. You can upload it.
and now what do I need?
I was saying under format, make it a so it's compressed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Documents.
Documents.
Oh, I see it. I see it. I see it. We're gonna try that again.
I'm gonna remove your other one.
I would too.
Oh, and let me share the sound for our recording. Wait, is somebody else uploading?
Okay, now
Camille, you didn't want to share your intro?
it's there.
Okay. Here is Angels.
Hi, everyone. My name is The Angel,
And I'm Diana.
and you are listening to this week's episode of
Divinely Dressed.
a show where we use basic math and a critical fashion lens to figure out who's the fashion queen of each season of Drag Race.
For this episode, we'll be analyzing Drag Race UK Season 6, the promo looks.
And the category is
Femme Fatale. That was beautiful. Also, I showed you Pixabay because that's all royalty free. So you could use any of those in a commercial podcast.
That was custom made. I had a friend of mine who's a sound producer. It's fashion music, but it's a holy choir going like like yeah. So it's like mixing the two. Yeah.
All right, Shruti and Ingrid also have a submission.
Hello everyone, welcome to Fearless Fairy Tales. I'm Shruti,
Hi, I'm Ingrid.
and today we'll be talking about The Little Mermaid.
We'll be talking about both versions of Little Mermaid, the original one and the Disney one from the 90s.
And we'll also be briefly touching on other fractured fairy tale versions.
So I don't know anything about the original Hans Christian fairy tale except that
I love it. Great job. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And again, if you want to upload later, I will let you know. But come back in 2 weeks. We're doing another workshop if you just like dropping in and learning new things. I think I'm teaching After Effects, and it will be very exciting. So thank you all. Have a good night.